Bro, you're so arrogant that you think people care, and nobody cares. Nobody woke up this morning wanting you to fail or wanting you to succeed. Nobody even thinks about you. No one cares. Some of you worship at church. Most of you worship at the altar of worthless people and their worthless opinions. But like when it comes to something like approaching a woman, the downside is basically nothing. There's maybe like a little bit of rejection, and the upside is you meet an incredible woman. So that's a calculated risk, but you still have the fear of that risk because of your evolutionary pressures, right? Your fear of death. We understand where things like homicide and mate guarding and jealousy, we understand where these things come from in our evolutionary past. We can transcend it. This is why evolutionary studies are so important, and it's why it's one of the key components of my podcast. What's going on, guys? This is Michael here, and one of the things I want to talk about today is the concept that happens when there are certain opportunities in your life and you're just not ready for these opportunities. I want to talk about why this happens to you. So some of you guys right now, you woke up this morning, and let me know if you agree with me, man. Put it right in the comments. You woke up this morning and you ended up dragging through your social media, looking at all these comments, looking at all these people who apparently are doing better than you, that make more money than you, that are dating more attractive people than you, and it upsets you. It made you, for some of you, it made you work harder, but for most of you, it made you just say, you know what, I just want to go back to sleep, man. This sucks. We can get into the reason why that is, but for the most part, one of the reasons why a lot of this is happening to you and why you have the feelings that you have is because of the fact that when the time came, you decided to not give yourself permission. I will tell you that most of the people watching this, most of the issues that you have as far as success are concerned, have to do with the fact that you do not give yourself permission. And the reason why you don't give yourself permission, for the most part, is because at some point in your adolescence, there was some experience that you had, some stimulus that taught you to give a huge about what other people think about you. Maybe you grew up in a really strict household, and in this strict household, they told you where to go to school, what to wear, who to date, what kind of job to get, what TV shows to watch, what church to go to, etc. And you got used to the idea of always letting other people make life decisions for you. And so because you started doing that, you started getting used to that, you started transmuting that into other parts of your life. So instead of just letting your parents pick what school you go to, it started being, hey man, now I really care that this girl I'm dating, is it good enough for my job? Is my boss gonna care? Now I really start wondering, hey, with my social media, if I go out and I'm like a cool guy and I have a super hot girlfriend with big old boobs, am I gonna be respected less by my job? Like, you start worrying about it. It does not matter. I have Tristan, he comes on the call sometimes. Tristan is going to one of the most liberal universities in the country. He's going to Harvard, and he started posting like some of the crazy stuff he does with me in Las Vegas, and no one cares. Part of the reason, this is gonna break some of you guys. You guys are gonna be tripped out by this. Part of the reason why so many of you have such a hard time giving yourself permission is because you're arrogant. You're an arrogant, entitled. You're arrogant. You're like, Michael, what are you talking about? I don't give myself permission. I'm meek. What do you mean I'm arrogant? Bro, you're so arrogant that you think people care, and nobody cares. Nobody woke up this morning wanting you to fail or wanting you to succeed. Nobody even thinks about you. No one cares. You don't take action because you're worried about what other people think about you, but those people aren't even thinking about you, and you're missing opportunities. You're missing job opportunities, you're missing dating opportunities, you're missing leadership opportunities, you're missing networking opportunities, you're missing growth opportunities, you're missing health opportunities because you care too much about what other people think of you. Most of you, some of you worship at church. Most of you worship at the altar of worthless people and their worthless opinions. Let me say that again. Some of you worship at a church. Most of you worship at the altar of worthless people and their worthless opinions. Now, if you get a call from Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, hey man, I got some tips on you to get bigger guests on your show, and here's some really cool audio equipment that we started using that really helped us. He's not a worthless person, and his opinion isn't worthless because he put in the work. If you're sitting there trying to make rocket ships and Elon Musk hits you up, or electric drivetrains, and Elon Musk hits you up and say, hey man, here's some tips, help you skip a few levels for you to be able to, build this electrical car quicker. Elon Musk is not a worthless person, and his opinion is not worthless. So you can listen to people like that. If I hit you up and I'm like, hey man, I got some tips for you as a public speaker, how you can get over your fear of public speaking. This is something that I've learned how to do. My opinion is not worthless, and I'm not a worthless person. But most of the time, what's happening is you guys are going home for Thanksgiving, and somebody at home with Thanksgiving is telling you how you should be living your life and who you should be dating, and they don't like what you post on social media, and they don't like how you fucking dress. And you listen to them, and it eats at you. It eats at you because you grew up in an environment where whenever you wanted to express yourself, mommy or daddy slapped you on the hand and said, no, be quiet, sit in the corner. Don't express yourself, be quiet. Orderly, you sit in an orderly classroom, everybody faces the front. You notice women more than men do better academically because the way academics are stacked up, also because 78% of teachers now are female, but men do better in a competitive meritocracy environment, and women do better in an environment where they have to sit there and rote memorization and listen. There's studies that show this. Women just do better in the modern education environment than men do, especially if you're a competitive man. So now you have these two opposing forces in your life. One of the opposing forces is your psychological need to listen to these people who brought you up, and your aversion to risk and your aversion to loss. So because you have an aversion to risk and aversion to loss, you don't take these chances and you don't give yourself permission in order to win, to actually accomplish that goal. Where does that fear come from? But by the way, when we talk about the psychological and evolutionary fear, most of the time, most of your fears, fear of snakes, fear of heights, fear of spiders, the aversion to the smell of sulfur, fear of like certain reptiles, those fears that you have, those fear of losses, or like maybe approach anxiety or fear of public speaking, where do they come from? Because in the ancestral environment, risk or loss meant loss of life. Meaning if you took a risk in the ancestral environment, you went up and talked to the wrong woman, and she was married to like the tribal chief, and he didn't like you, he would kill you and there'd be no repercussions on him. You made a play on his woman, so because you disrespected him, the tribal chief now kills you. Whenever you made the wrong decision in the ancestral environment, the answer was usually severe injury, being maimed, and then eventually death. So the reason why you have those evolutionary fears and why they're so strong, like it makes no sense for a modern man to be afraid to approach a woman. No sense whatsoever. Because you're not gonna die. Now, recently, there's been more fear because of Me Too. Men have been like, you see these guys walking past girls in the gym, and the girls are like, why are you staring at me? And it's clear the guy isn't even looking at her. You see these videos where these women are humiliating themselves, trying to embarrass guys, trying to use it as like a power play. But for the most part, when you see that, you understand that this fear of approach is utter nonsense. But where does the fear come from? Always understand, one of the reasons why we study evolutionary studies so much is because when we understand our evolutionary past, we can transcend it. We understand where things like homicide and mate guarding and jealousy, we understand where these things come from in our evolutionary past, we can transcend it. This is why evolutionary studies are so important, and it's why it's one of the key components of my podcast. So now we understand that the fear that you're feeling is actually the literal fear of death that your ancestors experienced. And so now your mom and dad, they told you where to sit, how to dress, all these different things. Your fear of loss of approval, and by the way, that's another big fear, right? Being ostracized by your family, by your tribe, that also meant death. And so you have this ancestral fear to like not displease your family. And so because you have that ancestral fear, by the way, you're gonna find that firstborns, they have this fear more than secondborns. If you go back, I believe there was some study done where they looked at revolutionaries like Che Guevara, and they found that a lot of these revolutionaries were second-born sons. They were rarely firstborns. The firstborn, he has more of a fear because he has more to inherit. Ancestrally, the firstborn inherited everything. The firstborn male. So the firstborn, he's more likely to have this fear of loss. I'm an example of that. I played the straight and narrow. I'm from Texas. I went to the University of Texas. I got a business degree because it was the safe degree. And then afterward, I joined the U.S. military, about as safe as you can get. I played high school football, all the things that are normal. My parents were Christian, so I turned out Christian. Like, it's about as middle down the road as you could possibly get, right? I'm from Texas. I love red meat. I love red meat. I love guns, all this stuff. I love the Dallas Cowboys, just right down the middle. And I know that a lot of those things were influenced by my upbringing. But one of the things I had to learn as I got older is that I need to understand that my parents don't always have the right answer for me. And the group that I grew up with, while I love them, there's so many guys that I love, I went to high school with. No offense to those guys that you guys are watching. I want to be richer than all of you. I want to be more successful than all of you. I want my wife to be so incredibly amazing and beautiful that you guys are sitting there with your mouth agape, drooling when you see her. That's what I want. I'm like Caleb in the Old Testament. I want the big grapes. Caleb, who was with Abraham. I want the big grapes, right? So these are the things, these are the decisions that I've made in my life. It took me a while. It took me a lot of pain. Actually, probably a lot of the independence that I feel from other people's beliefs about me came from being in the U.S. military for 7 years, being able to make my own decisions. I know a lot of people think, well, no, man, you're in the military. You're just like a cog in a wheel. And it's not the truth, man. Especially if you're an officer, you have to make decisions. There's a lot of agency that comes with flying an airplane because you're the one guiding the mission. So coming to that realization, being on your own and realizing that the world's not going to end just because you disappoint these other people every once in a while. You go back home and you have a fat aunt. She's out of shape and she's sitting there trying to tell you how to live your life when she can't even get her own life in order. I don't have one, by the way. I love all my aunts. My aunts are incredible. But I'm saying, I know some of you guys have an aunt who, she's been divorced 3 times trying to give you advice on your relationship. She's not a worthless person in general, but in this case, her advice is worthless. But we care so much about her advice, and we seek their approval so much, again, because of our aversion to loss. Why? Because of our fear. And where does our fear come from? An ancestral fear of death. Okay? When you can understand the evolutionary pinnings behind it, then we can transcend it. We can transcend it. People don't understand why I'm so obsessed with evolutionary psychology, because when we understand our evolution, we can transcend it. And when you go back maybe 11,700 years ago, the beginning of the agricultural revolution, or before that, about 27,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens were the only hominids left on the planet after the Neanderthals died, if you go back to that time period, there's no more selection pressure. We're the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. And if you look right now, once we get to broad spectrum antibiotics, with the population of the planet in 1900 goes from 1 billion people, and the year 2000 it goes to 7 billion, almost 7 billion people. And so there's very little selection pressure. So what's happened is, because there's so little selection pressure, people don't have to physically or psychologically evolve anymore. And so we're maladapted. We're still adapted for our savanna-like existence as hunter-gatherers, but we live in this concrete jungle. We're not adapted for this. There's an anthropologist named Dunbar who came up with the idea of Dunbar's number. I refer to it all the time. And you, throughout your history, were only designed to see about 150 faces in your whole life. You guys saw 150 faces this morning when you were scrolling on Instagram. So now you're maladapted for this. So let's go back to the original point. There were opportunities you had in life, and you missed out on those opportunities because you did not give yourself permission. But the difference is, you watch this video today and you know that giving yourself permission, the only reason why you have the fear to not give yourself permission is because of evolutionary fears. But those fears are fears of death, but you're not going to die anymore. If you go up and approach a woman today, you're not going to die for the most part. I mean, if you're out here in Inglewood and you go up to the wrong guy's girl, maybe you might die, but for the most part, you're not going to die. You know what I'm saying? You out here in North Las Vegas, you might you might die, but for the most part, you ain't gonna die. So a lot of you guys, like even in my situation right now, if something horrible happened in my business, I had to file for bankruptcy or some kind of scandal, it would be terrible. But would it be as terrible as a guy who's a hunter back, 50,000 years ago, who has a compound fracture of his leg and goes the rest of his life without being able to walk or feed himself? What's worse? What's worse? You going through a little financial trouble because you took some risk in 2024 when the world will bail you out? Or, what is that worse? They used to put people in jail when they were in debt. They don't even do that to you anymore. You can file for bankruptcy. What's worse? What your ancestors had to go through with the risk that they took, or the risk that you have to take right now that you're so afraid of? So again, now you understand this risk, this fear that you feel of loss is a fear of death, but this death isn't real anymore. In some cases it is, but it's so funny how people even today, if you ask them, are you more afraid of, which are you more afraid of? Snakes, spiders? Hey, what's up, man? Hey, what's going on, brother? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, no, it's all good. When you have a fear of snakes, fear of spiders, fear of heights, fear of airplanes, fear of French fries, and fear of cars, everyone's like, oh, no, snakes and spiders, the sharks, those are the ones that'll kill you. But in the reality, you're about 100,000 times more likely to die from hypertension from McDonald's French fries than you are from dying in a plane crash. Because we're not evolved for this era. Back in the Pleistocene era, a snake would kill you. The smell of sulfur was maybe rotting flesh that would kill you. That was a very different lifestyle. And so those adaptations of fear that we had, being ostracized from your family, that would kill you. Those things are gone now. You have to recognize those things. And when you do, you can transcend them. Always remember this. The reason why we learn about evolutionary principles is so that we can identify where our fears come from and we can transcend them. We can move past them. So now you can transcend those things, and now you give yourself permission. My man Tom Sosnoff, this guy's like a billionaire. He owns Tasty Trade. He sold 3 brokerages in the last couple years. And Tom told me, he was like, every time there was a chance for me to take a risk, somehow his brain works different than mine. Every time there was a chance for him to take a risk, he took it, and every time he never regretted it. He's not saying he got money every time, but the big ones were so big that it worked out for him. I mean, if you honestly look, I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan, at Mark Cuban's full career, it's way more losses than wins. Mark Cuban had way more L's than W's, way more. Everything from some of the business ventures he had to sitting there letting Tyson Chandler go so he could try to get Dwight Howard on the team. Way more L's, but he had one big $5 billion W called selling his company to Yahoo. And then he made $5 billion from that. Actually, he had another W. Right after that, he bought a bunch of put options to protect his position because he saw an oncoming crash. So I definitely give him credit for that. But, in general, we see a lot of these people who did take these risks, and they understand if things go bad, how bad are they going to go? You guys, we're on the precipice right now of seeing a man elected for the second time who's filed multiple bankruptcies. I'm talking about Donald Trump, because he was willing to take the risk that you weren't. And he was also willing to go up and talk to the girl that you weren't. Because he was willing to take those risks. Now I want you to know something else, because most of you guys watching this are men. And as men, I need you to know something evolutionarily. Throughout history, and this is even like recent history, 40% of men and 80% of women have reproduced, which means there's 60% of men who did not get to reproduce, or maybe even died virgins. The reason why we have more testosterone, and when you see societies where you have more men that have less sex, those men take more risks because they have to. If they don't take risks, you think about some of the most violent places on earth, right? There's massive wealth inequality in like Venezuela and Brazil. You see tons of violence because these men have to take more risks in order to maybe get some wealth and be noticed by the opposite sex. And you guys can read about this in the Evolutionary Psychology textbook, or you guys can read about this in the Evolution of Desire. So now, let's talk about you specifically. Let's see what you did today. Some of you guys who are watching this, you went out to a club today. You went out to a brunch. You went out to a place where there might be attractive members of the opposite sex. And you wanna know what happened? You didn't talk to them. And the reason why you didn't talk to them, you think it's because you were scared. The reason why you didn't talk to them is because if I looked at your apartment right now, it looks like. If I looked at your apartment right now, you got empty Chipotle bowls sitting next to your little ass bed that's not even made correctly, and all of it looks like shit. You didn't dress well, you didn't fix your hair, you hadn't gone to the gym, you keep getting fatter, you don't practice talking to women, so you don't know how to talk to them, you don't have any female friends, like I've been preaching, so you can't get into any of the clubs, You can't get any good spots. You don't get invited to cool parties. You don't have women introducing you to other women because you didn't listen to what I told you. You didn't take action. You kept listening to what stupid dating coaches and pickup artists from 25 years ago told you. And instead of listening to what the truth is, the things that actually work, you were just so focused on preserving your ego and not taking risk. You didn't want to take risk. Because remember, all risk and all fear of risk is essentially a fear of death. So you could have had an incredible time with an unbelievable woman, but I bet you every one of you right now who is afraid to approach, that's something I've noticed. Whenever I see guys with massive approach anxiety, whenever I go check their house or their room is always garbage. Right now, think about it. In the comments, you have a friend of yours that has massive approach anxiety. Go take a picture of his room and show it to him. You have a friend right now who has approach anxiety. Go take a picture of his room and you're gonna see that he knows internally he's gonna fail, so he doesn't even set up anything in his apartment to have a woman come back. Watch, tell me, you guys are gonna be in the comments like, damn it, he's right. Every one of my friends with approach anxiety, their apartments are disgusting because they know they're not gonna win. They've already sabotaged themselves. Because once they sabotage themselves, now they have an excuse to not take risk, to not have the fear of death, evolutionarily, that fear of death. And so they can sit there and live quiet, happy lives. Men living quiet lives of desperation. It was Owen Cook who said this to me once, and I agree. He goes, being a beta is not that bad. He goes, if you're a beta male, you still get to eat. You might get to have like once. Being a beta male is that bad. And most of you guys, you don't even realize this, but this is the decision you made. Because the decision you made was to not take action. You've made the decision to be this beta male. And now you got to live with the consequences until it starts to eat you alive. And the thing that's eating you alive now is that social media exists. So now you can see how the rest of the people live. And it's pissing you off. And so now you've been angered enough, and now these two forces are fighting against each other. Your necessity, this unease that you have deep down that caused you to watch this video in the first place, you know something's wrong. Versus this very soft environment that you live in as a human being in modernity, where you don't have to do anything and food just pops up. I can push a button, car comes and picks me up, I can push a button, food shows up. Bro, you can push a button on Seeking Arrangement or Eros and a woman shows up. How about that? Think about how little work that is. Most men, their bodies produce testosterone so they can do work, build structures, hunt game, and take risks so that they could attract the opposite sex. You guys are sitting there pushing buttons and having go up to your house or paying for OnlyFans models. You're sitting there, what's up, boss? I have no idea. I'm sorry. Yeah. You're sitting there trying to, you have OnlyFans models coming to your house, you're ordering a pizza. Why would your body need testosterone? Your body doesn't need any testosterone. Why would it? What would the point be? So that's kind of where you guys are right now. And then if you want to start taking risks, you're gonna notice, holy shit. Guys, here's another thing that's really crazy. When you start taking risks, your testosterone levels start going up. There's some surveys that show that when men are surrounded by attractive women, their testosterone serum goes up when they're at a betting table and they start betting bigger and bigger. When you start taking those risks and understand, hey, that risk I feel is just a fear of death, but I'm not really gonna die, you take more chances and you do better. Now, I want to point out one other thing. I'm walking around through West Hollywood right now and people are staring at me like I'm crazy talking into this Osmo right now. And I give this a zero. I give this much of a about what they think because they're not affecting my money. They're not affecting my happiness. They're not affecting my dating life. So fuck them in the most respectful way possible. Fuck them and their fucking opinions. They're useless people with their useless opinions. When you guys can grasp this concept and start taking risks based on that, your life is gonna change. And here's the other thing, you just take risks, women will notice that just in general. I also, whenever I see some guy who works for our company and he takes some risk, where he's a closer or a coach, and he takes a little bit of risk, calculated risk, we wanna elevate those people because that means they're willing to put in the effort, okay? Their mind is in the right space. Now, we can get into another conversation about this, about like standard deviations and what's the best calculated risk. But like when it comes to something like approaching a woman, the downside is basically nothing. It's maybe like a little bit of rejection, and the upside is you meet an incredible woman. So that's a calculated risk, but you still have the fear of that risk because of your evolutionary pressures, right? Your fear of death. Got it? Beautiful. Guys, I'm about to get on an airplane. I'm about to go to Las Vegas. If you like these type of videos, let me know. If you've decided right now after watching this that you're gonna start giving yourself permission so you can take advantage of incredible opportunities that come your way, put a 1 down in the chat. Let me know that you're about to take risks, you're about to change. And by the way, for those of you who are willing to change, if you wanted to be surrounded by men who are always willing to change, who are always willing to update their software and do whatever it takes to win, consider going to the school group, SKOOL, school.com/Men of Action free. Just look up Men of Action in the search group. Join us, find me on Instagram, and make sure you subscribe to this channel because I'm gonna be doing a lot more like this. You know, previously, I've been doing these panel shows, I've been doing podcasts, going back and forth with my guests, and somebody told me, is like, hey, Michael, you should start doing these prompts where it's just you and the audience, so that's what I'm gonna start doing. Hopefully you like these. We're gonna be doing these, try to do one of these every day. Let me know, and make sure you subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.